Forgive me, I've got a bit of a funny throat, so some water here. Okay, so I'm the Digital Curation Specialist at the State Library of New South Wales, and as Matt said, I've got a background in audiovisual archives and digital preservation. So I bring that to the library because I had a focus on Born Digital. So it's a very broad remit, so it was difficult to try to work out where to focus in on. So what I've decided to do today is just talk a little bit about digital preservation and how we've put it, started working in that space at the library and some of the main challenges that we've faced, because I think that that's where some of the interesting things come from. So this is the standard definition. What is digital preservation? Coordinated ongoing set of processes and activities ensuring long-term, blah, blah. You've probably seen this. This is the first one, is the DPC, Digital Preservation Handbook definition. But what I see it as is a process of convincing people to value said digital content in the same way that they value physical objects and enable continued access to this content over time. You're asking people to assign value to something that's often consumed in a really ephemeral way, that's transient. You consume it and it's over. And it already has an IT industry behind it, backing it and telling you what to do. So I must say, when I first started working in digital preservation, it was really very baby steps, talking IT wanting to fix errors and saying, oh, hang on, I don't think you should do that. But just, that was a very long time ago. But so I am the digital curation specialist, and I wasn't initially too certain about what that really meant, but what it is a holistic approach to preservation. And this is what I sit within the Library and Information Services section. There's not actually a digital preservation section at the library. It hasn't emerged anywhere. And a lot of organisations, it emerged out of IT, or it emerged into collection care or preservation, but it hasn't really happened at the library. So I came in, I think 4 years ago, to humongous remit again to look at the whole end-to-end thing. But what I've done is, it's a Born Digital focus. The library is very digitisation focused. I'll get to that. So coming in to talk about Born Digital, looking at where we can implement preservation standards where possible, at the point of acquisition and even before that. Now, I must say that that's one area at the library we haven't really been able to tackle that well yet. That's coming. But when I worked in film acquisition, we talked to producers, we talked to post houses, funding agents, to say, you need to tell people that this is what they have to give us and in this format. So we're getting there with the acquisition staff. We're imposing rigorous analysis and metadata, so descriptive metadata coming from, say, for Born Digital photographs coming from the photographer, and technical metadata, like saying things like don't strip out metadata, trying to get some uniformity and training the acquisition staff to get them to be able to check it as well, and that's been working really well. And then the next part is storage, ongoing management of the files. I don't actually maintain the storage myself, that's from another department, but being able to be involved in those discussions and try to influence how that looks. It's not necessarily always successful. And then access, because being in a library, I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but it's it's access driven, like not nobody's business, I have to say, coming from an archive. It was interesting. So you might have seen this. This is a digital curation life cycle model, which pretty much is a nice little visualization of its beginning to end. It's a holistic approach. And I've got you can go to the digital curation people there. What do we collect? This is the kind of material we collect. It's, at the moment, we are Born Digital photographs and audio, like oral history recordings, primarily is what we're focusing on. Getting an end-to-end workflow happening for that. The published materials sort of been put to the side because we have national digital legal deposit legislation that's come in. So looking at actually quite an innovative joint libraries initiative called NED, National E-Deposit, Electronic Deposit. You're nodding, good. And so that will take over a lot of the published digital content, and hopefully once New South Wales gets legal deposit stuff, that will start happening. But what we're doing next is wanting to look at and focusing for this year is the more complex manuscript digital collections, like authors that use particular programs, proprietary programs to write their manuscripts and manage their manuscripts. So that's what we want to be doing next. So what do we do? This is sort of the life cycle of preservation. So we implemented 4 new systems at once at the library, and that was Rosetta, which is our digital preservation system, Alma for published, AdLib for archival, and Primo as a discovery layer. So we did it all at once too, which I don't recommend, to be honest. So really, again, what this was an exercise in convincing people, but influencing people that this change was necessary, because I must say this workflow and the 4 new systems actually forced change upon staff, where this is how we used to do it. There was a certain level of flexibility in the old ways, but the new ways, here are the benefits, but you have to change what you're doing. So bringing people along for the change, I have to say, is probably one of the biggest things that I've had to do. But if you just look at this kind of circle, you've got appraisal, and what we've done up here is advising future and current donors. So just even a couple of weeks ago, talking to some dancers about their collections and thinking about how they're going to lodge their material in the future, and advising them on AV formats, and think about your email and empty your trash before we get it, that kind of thing, which has been good. Just getting people thinking about their collections. Then we've also put in, through this acquisition and transfer process, a Bagger. We're using Bagger, which is used as a Bagot standard, which means that it has a nice structure, but it also does the fixity, so check, move, check of the files, something where we used to use 100 different things. We can now use one program to do that, which is very nice. And if we need to make any changes to files, we can do that at this point too. And then coming around to the ingest, one other thing that we've done is partnered with our systems and applications team to do an agile project management course. Oh, I should mention, if you're interested in Bagger, Matt Burgess, who's here, wrote a blog post about our implementation of Bagger at the library, which you can find on our website. This agile project we've done, worked on a project to create a bulk ingest tool for Rosetta, and hopefully going to be being able to hand it over a set of files and some metadata, and it will create the records and ingest the files. That's our that's been our aim for a long time. So we're quite close. It's quite exciting to get to that point. But what it was a really good experience of being able to influence how an IT project is developed over time and the way that we want it to go and what the priorities are. It's still going. It's been a really positive experience, I have to say. So here we are. We have all of our preservation metadata, we have all of our objects, we have our fixity, we have it in a bundle together, and we put it into storage. So we have 3 copies, 3 separate locations. We actually are at the moment looking at a storage strategy that I'm not sure which way that's going to go. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Get it all together, bundle it up, put it into the system. But this is a bit I wanted to talk about mostly, was the challenges. So digitisation. The library is so digitisation focused. Their main amount, the big digital excellence program funding, which was millions of dollars, is around digitising and providing access to collection material. Part of that was infrastructure, which is where our new systems, including our digital preservation system, came from. But there's such a focus on digitised. It's like Born Digital is the poor cousin of digitised content, because all of the development and resources are going into that. The Panda Agile project was about developing this bulk ingest tool for digitized content. We've just managed to kind of tack on the end Born Digital. So I must say, I was able to influence some standards for digitizing at the very beginning, like for AV. But yeah, obsolete carriers. And my next favourite, the inbuilt obsolescence of new stuff. So content that's been left on formats for years and years and years. We've had a collection just recently that's not even 10 years old where we can't get files off a disk. We do not accept files on disks anymore. Okay, complexity of nonlinear collections and how to preserve an interactive experience. That whole story-driven interactive fiction. Haven't even begun to look at that. We did start looking at that for AV. And the next thing around authenticity, about how we ensure future audiences know how we experience things. So Nokia phones, remember these? There was a Nokia 3G film festival back in the day, I think it was 2005. We collected the little tiny versions, and we also got high-res versions, but we got information about emulators and also collected some of the phones so that we could say this is how people viewed it. Isn't this amazing? Not necessarily, this user experience isn't necessarily a big thing at the State Library, but it's something that we'd like to think about and document in the metadata. And then this is my favourite, the reluctance to collect material that cannot be accessed. So managing the expectations around that and saying, right, you know what, this stuff, yeah, it's hard, we got to get it. Luckily, we are getting social media in. There's a lot of anxiety around not being able to provide access to it. But, like in an archive, I can say I don't care about access. Just bring it in, let's collect it. But in a library, you can't. So it's managing those expectations and saying, you don't want to not collect it because I can't provide access now. An email collection, I can't provide beautiful access to it now. You might need to come into the reading room. It kind of goes against your expectations as a consumer of digital content, but please collect it. But that's not necessarily always successful. This is a big one, funding and resourcing. It's an ongoing commitment. It's something that's what digital preservation is. It's an ongoing thing. It's not a one-off funding thing or we're going to give you money to digitise this collection. No, it actually, you need to continue to fund it. It's also not just about technical stuff. It's your dream team. It's around having IT specialists, librarians, archivists, developers. So I must say that people expect that I can do all of those things, but I can't. It's a collaborative process. You've got to have a good relationship with IT. You've got to work with your librarians and archivists, and you've got to work with human resources to make sure they have digital skills in their recruitment. I think I've got a picture there. Oh yeah, there you go. And we also talk to international organisations and national organisations about what they're doing, but it's about, I must say, trying to get people thinking more longer term. And it has been an adjustment for me in being in a library to get people to think longer term and collaboratively. And that's I think that's perfect timing. So I hate to only give you issues, but really that's where we're at.